So over the years, there's been a variety of different reiterations of critical path methodology, and but today what we're going to do is focus on how that applies and how you might apply this methodology directly to new home sales. So a path, or the critical path, is a system of events that needs to happen with a customer from the time you first meet them to the time that they are signing a purchase agreement. You're going to have to build a relationship with them such that the customer is going to be comfortable giving you free information about different details in their life. So at the top of the header, what you have is approach, qualify, demonstrate, cite, and close. Every person that you interact with, you're going to have some sort of an approach. And the key in there is just make a friend. You want to be sincere, be real, make them feel comfortable and not awkward to be walking into your place of business. You have to understand if it's a new home sales environment and somebody is approaching a house that might look like a sales office, might look like a house, not really sure. There's flags out there. There might be a parking lot. There might not be a parking lot. It's not always comfortable for somebody just to walk up to a stranger's house and walk into it. So although you work there and you have a full appreciation for that's exactly what's supposed to happen, a stranger who's approaching your home might not understand exactly where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to do. Do they just go in? Do they knock on the door? What do they do? So, in terms of your approach, first off, you have to make sure that you're approachable. Your project is approachable. There's adequate parking. If there's any other sort of challenges with construction, you need to identify those things so that there's no obstructions to the person parking their car, getting out of their car, and coming to your front door. I know this sounds basic, but many times we get kind of occupied in the dynamics of being in the project and seeing that there's construction, things that other thing are happening. But maybe there's going to be a concrete truck parked in front of your sales office on Tuesday, and you kind of need to be aware of it. You might want to put a sign that redirects someone to park somewhere else. So the approach, your goal is to make a friend and be open. Be upbeat when somebody comes through your front door. Please be on your feet. Extend a hand and tell them who you are. Hi, my name is Don, and your name is Jim. Hi, Jim. Welcome to DR Horton. Thank you for coming to take a look today. And the goal is really just to make this person comfortable. The project looks like, what are we offering? How large is it? What are the boundaries of the project? So what I might submit for your consideration is go ahead and put together like maybe a 30-second commercial. And it might sound something like this. Hi, my name's Don. Welcome to DR Horton. We're building 3 different types of homes here, and they range in size from 1,700 to 2,200 square feet. We've got a 3-bedroom with a loft. We have a 4-bedroom, and we've got 1 and 2 car garage options. We have a total of about 110 home sites here. We're currently built out 50%, and so at this current rate, we should have homes available, maybe probably over the next 12 months. My model home's open, and you're welcome to take a look at it. I'd like to show it to you if you have some time. And so what are we doing? Like, I've given them a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. And so I've kind of got a rule. If you give somebody information, then you have the right to ask for information in return. What's this kind of information I'm looking for these people at this point in time? Am I getting into a deep interrogation about what their needs and wants are? No, I'm not doing that because it's a brand new relationship and all I'm trying to do is cover some basics. And so what I need for them first and foremost is I need their name, their email address, and their telephone number. It's absolutely essential that you register every customer coming in the door because they may not buy today and they may not buy tomorrow, but if you don't have a way to follow up with them, I guarantee it's going to be much more difficult for you to persuade them to purchase in the future. And so what I will do is in that transition time, in order for me to capture their phone number without being awkward, sometimes people will just hand a reg card to them and say, here's a registration card. If you could please fill it out, I'd appreciate it. Well, that doesn't always work, and it's not really that smooth. You're also telling somebody to do something where you yourself could probably do it. So you might want to hold on to that reg card and just ask them. And I'm sorry, what is your last name, Jim? Oh, Johnson. Okay, great. JJ, put it here. So you might want to fill it out for them. What I do is kind of a hybrid of that. I will just, as I'm describing to them the community, I will say something like, Oh, Jim, by the way, let me go ahead and send you a diagram of the community. What's your cell phone number? And at that point, they say, oh, it's 515-555-1212. And I text them a diagram of the project. So the reason that's not awkward is because they didn't really think I was going to premeditatively ask for their phone number, and it was very spontaneous, and there's a reason and a purpose for it. It's because I'm texting them a floor plan, a features list, a price sheet, or some other important information that they need to have. So now that we've made your prospect somewhat comfortable, they've come in the house, they have a general understanding of what they're going to see. They they are comfortable with you because you have an appropriate level of enthusiasm. You've got a smile. You're upbeat. You've positioned yourself to be helpful. You've been able to capture their name and their telephone number, which is super important. We're going to get their email address in a little bit. But what we're doing is we're kind of laying a foundation for what's going to happen next. And that is we have to figure out what their story is. And so we need to do that by asking questions. And so if you ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And so what I'd have you do is let's put quite a bit of time and energy and reason into thinking about what type of questions we're going to ask and what is it, the sort of answers that we need to hear in order for us to advance our sale. And what I'd submit for your consideration is that you kind of need to understand what these questions are before you are in the midst of asking the question. I want to make sure that the questions that you ask are in your own tone, in your own words, in your own voice, and that you're really, really comfortable with them and they sound very natural and very conversational. It's not always helpful, and sometimes it's even off-putting to be reading something off a card or to sound like you're reading something off a card when you're asking for specific detailed information from a customer. And so let's talk about the categories of questions that I think we need to cover in order to get us through the qualifying stage: approach, qualify, demonstrate, cite, and close. So in qualifying, what are the categories we need to focus on in order for us to get a complete idea of their story? I would for your consideration, they're in front of you. I think it's experience, urgency, ability, status, requirements, and motivation are the top headers. Experience questions are matters of the past, and they're easy to answer, and they have to do with things that are with regards to the prospects or the person's past history. Anything that happened in their past experience, they should be an expert in, and it should be easy for them to answer. So an example would be, Jim, what's your favorite color? Green. Great. So it didn't take him much to answer that because he kind of understands. So within the context of selling a house, I might ask him, Jim, can you tell me a little bit about where you currently live? So Jim's not going to choke. Jim knows where he lives. It's a pretty easy question to answer. And if he's comfortable with me because I've built enough rapport in the approach, then he's going to freely answer. He's going to say, well, I live in Ankeny. I currently rent. Interesting. So I didn't ask if he rented or if he owned, but he's comfortable with me, so he offered it. He gave me additional information I wasn't expecting. So experience questions have to do with the consumer's past. Next is urgency. Urgency is just their time frame. So time frames are usually backfitted into calendar events. And what I mean when I say that is this: I don't really believe there's any such thing as time. I do believe that there is sequence. In other words, this has to happen first, this has to happen second, and this has to happen third. So that might take 6 months, it might take 6 minutes. So urgency has to do with what are the changes that are in this person's life or in their thinking that are motivating them to transact now or to transact in 6 months. My goal is to hammer down that time frame. I need to focus my attention on people that are going to transact sooner and then position myself to follow up with people who might not be wanting to transact as early. Number three, ability. Ability are simple financing questions. Are you currently working with a lender? And it has to do with your source of down payment. Do you have to sell another property before you get into this property? What are the sort of things that are motivating you around your finances? I can ask simple career questions. Oh, Jim, can you tell me a little bit about your current job? Or you said you live in Ankeny. Do you also work in Ankeny? Yes, I do. Great. What type of business are you in? Well, I'm a neurosurgeon. Excellent. So, just anecdotally, we could probably imagine that the neurosurgeon might have a slightly better income than a gas station attendant. And this might influence where someone lives, and it might influence how much money they have. So, asking ability questions is absolutely key. And the faster you can get to ability questions, the more productive your conversations are going to be, particularly because it's going to flush out really quickly if they're contingent. Do they have to sell a home before they get into another property? So dealing with contingency is a science and an art that we're going to talk about later, but also it could potentially be a blocker. They might not have the ability to go forward unless they have to put their home on the market. And that's going to take time. So next thing we talk about is status. And so what status is what is the person's status in terms of being a decision maker in this process? Uh, Don't always just assume because you've got a husband and a wife and they come in and experience questions go great, you're building great rapport, you determine they want to do something right away because they have urgency. We start talking about ability questions and they seem to have really solid employment and good credit. They've said that they're working with a lender. And then something comes up, and that is I ask a question, something like this. And when it comes to purchasing the home, is there anybody else that's going to be included in that decision? At which point the husband or the wife looks at me and says, well, yes, definitely, my mother-in-law has to take a look at the home because she's giving us gift funds as part of our down payment, and she really wants to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Great. So at that point, I have a situation on my hands. I don't have the decision maker sitting in front of me. There might be another decision maker that is not so obvious. You have to determine who you're talking to and who holds power, not just in the dynamics of the decision, but also in the dynamics of this relationship. The mother-in-law just might be happy to fork over money and without any conditions, or it might be a situation where the mother-in-law has to have final authority to sign off on every decision that this couple makes. You have to measure who holds the power in the relationship. You have to be respectful of anybody who does or does not have as much authority in this relationship. This can be a very sensitive issue when it comes to interrogating someone or asking questions. A lot of us don't want to admit that we don't have full authority as a grown adult to make final decision over our own finances or over where we live or how we live. So take a little bit of time and don't overcomplicate this question. I kind of like the question that I just posed for you, and that is, when it comes time to purchasing, is there anyone else who's going to be involved in the decision? Oh, just yourselves. Great. That's perfect. And no one else. Well, sometimes people want to say, well, we do want to bring our children by, we want to surprise them, but we wanted to make sure this was going to be real before it actually happens. And so we're bringing by, little Susie and Billy to come and take a look at the home. And believe it or not, sometimes that happens and the kids will blow your deal out of the water for any number of reasons. Increasingly, what we find in society is that kids are having a lot more authority over things than what it maybe used to be a generation ago. So, but still, be respectful. Try to understand what the dynamics of the situation is. What's the dynamic of the family? Who holds the power in this situation? You're also going to find that many times during the course of the transaction, power shifts. And so when you're dealing with maybe in a couple, and there's one of those people you're primarily going through negotiations with, or that person's kind of that alpha person at that time, understand that that could actually shift as your transaction goes through time. And it's actually fairly normal that one of the two parties becomes very busy at work and is unable to answer questions or follow up. And so you want to address everybody with equal authority, and you want to approach everybody with equal levels of respect, even if they appear to be mousy or they appear to not have authority in what's going on. The truth of the matter is they do, and you still have to be respectful of their position. But figuring this stuff out is essential before you try to ask a closing question. So you're going to notice that it is only now that we're getting to requirements, which is the basic utility of the house, neighborhood, features, and size. Most sales professionals start with this in real estate, and unfortunately, they don't evolve past this. But the truth of the matter is, until I understand what someone's urgency and ability is, am I talking to the right person? Have I built enough rapport? Do I understand this person's story from their past experience? Until I kind of have that foundation in place, it doesn't really matter how many bedrooms they need. It doesn't matter that they want to cut their commute down from their job. It doesn't matter that they want to be in a AAA school. All those basic requirement type things, although are very, very important, they're not the most important thing for me at early in the process. Until I position myself into a understanding that I know that I can help them and I understand who they are, I don't really want to start and lead with really vapid kind of questions like, well, how many bedrooms are you looking for? How many bathrooms do you need? Do you want a big yard? Do you want a small yard? Do you want fence around the yard? Can you tell me about the community you want to live in? As I said, these things are important, but they're only important now. They're only important because I know that I'm getting close to being able to ask a closing question. Why? Because I'm removing these obstacles: experience, urgency, ability, status. I'm in requirements now. And are there a lot of 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses in the market? Absolutely, for goodness sakes. So if someone says, well, I'm kind of looking for a 3-bedroom house, well, great. I got 10 of them. So it's not really enough to understand their requirement in terms of the structure that you're talking about, which is why I ask requirement questions just before I get into the motivation question, right? So motivation questions are complicated and they're interpersonal and they can be emotional. Requirement questions are not. They're very administrative. I need 4 bedrooms, 3 bath. I do need a larger backyard because I've got 2 large dogs and I currently live in an apartment, and I would like to get at least a half acre, or I'd like to get at least 25,000 square feet, whatever those bullet points are. But an average salesperson will just take a laundry list and write down, great, 4 bedrooms, big backyard, fence, dog, got it. But a great salesperson will say, okay, so you say you need 3 bedrooms. I totally appreciate that. And it's the home is just for you and your wife. So I get that. So with the other bedrooms, are those home offices or do you have company come and visit? So now what I'm trying to do is take a basic requirement and expand it a little bit to understand what the true need is and what the motivation might be. It is just us. However, my mother-in-law does come and stay with us around the holidays. We have to have one of those 3 bedrooms, definitely has to be on the first floor. And we also have to have a walk-in shower to accommodate that my mother-in-law as well. Great. So now I've been able to take a very basic requirement and I expanded it into, okay, there's going to be somebody else that's going to be staying at that house periodically, right? Maybe this feathers back into status question. Maybe it feathers back into ability question. Um, but I'm advancing my cause to get to the final category, which is motivation, right? Motivation is, where are we in the cycle? Like, what are the keys to action and what is the core reason? What would be the core reason for you to go forward? It's not always easy to find that core reason, but there is a dominant motivating reason that will cause people to go forward with the transaction. And a lot of times what we do as humans is we have something and we want it. We want it very, very emotionally. It's a deep-seated emotion and we have to have it. We want it. And what we do is we end up backing logic into our emotional decisions. And so, a 5-year-old says, I want candy, I want candy, I want candy, I want candy. And you'll say, I'm sorry, it's not healthy, you can't have it. And then they'll say something like, well, it is orange, and oranges are orange, and oranges have vitamin C, and so it's healthy. So, in the mind of a child trying to justify their decision, they'll take a very emotional topic and they'll flip it into some sort of de facto logical argument. Well, as adults, we do this all day long. We just don't necessarily do it with candy. We do it with the new car that we want. We do it with the new house that we want. We even do it with the new spouse that we want, quite honestly. And so please be aware that this is operating in the back of your customer's mind. And it's totally normal and it's totally natural. So you might not ever get to the real emotional core of what this person really, really wants emotionally. However, what you're going to do is you're going to look for signs when they start fabricating their own logical argument to make a positive decision. And so, half a generation ago, there was a lot of books on the market that talked about people buy for prestige, or people are buying for honor, or they're buying for, emotional utility reasons. People have to have a big house. They're buying a big house because of their position in life. And, a lot of that was on the surface seemed to make sense, but when you really start getting into the grappling with the details of how you practically execute on that stuff, what you're really doing is kind of pigeonholing and creating stereotypes for yourself that I find were never really that productive. So when you start probing around core motive, what you're really looking for is when people start trying to basically they start selling themselves, and you're no longer there, you're no longer a sales professional. What you're there doing is you're listening to them tell you, well, I do really need the fourth bedroom. Now that we have a situation where we have to work from home, I really, really need a door that closes for a home office, and to have the guest room would be great. And then, if, my mother-in-law does visit and we have other guests, we probably need the four bedroom, probably three bedrooms not going to work for us. And so I have customers who say that to me all the time. They're talking themselves into the purchase. For goodness sakes, let them run. Let them run with it. Periodically agree with them. Yeah, that does make sense. Your argument does make sense. What you're going to find is they're going to go forward, and they're preparing themselves for you to ask a closing question. We spend lots and lots of time on questions. What kind of questions to ask, and the categories, and how do we ask them, and when do we ask them, and what does that look like? So you know about experience, urgency, ability, status, requirements, and core motivation. Those are the categories. But let's talk a little bit about the types of questions. And this is very mechanical, but the types of questions that I would have you use. Now, there's probably four of the categories in addition to the four that you're looking at right now, but I want to keep it simple. They're open-ended, closed-ended, tie-down, and light command. So a closed-ended question requires or elicits a one-word answer. It could be yes or no. Are you happy? Yes. Would you like to buy a home today? No. One-word answers. What's your favorite color? Yellow. So they have a place and time, but closed-ended questions do not solicit or invite or engage people to expand on concepts and thoughts greater than just one word. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, are the ones you're familiar with: who, what, where, when, why, how. Actually, I left why out of this sequence because sometimes people feel why is an anchor that causes someone to feel as though they have to justify their position. So I'm not a big fan of using why. I can get to the why in a variety of other ways without using the word why. But open-ended questions are designed to encourage conversation. What did you like about the second home that we took a look at? When were you thinking about making a purchase? How long have you been looking for a home? Well, someone might say, well, 2 weeks, right? Well, at least it's a two-word answer, right? So tie downs are basically they're signposts where you're trying to see if you're moving in the right direction. And so a tie down is you're looking for agreement. You're asking a question, but you're actually thinking that you're going to get a yes answer to it. So examples of that are, Jim, wouldn't you agree? Jim, does this make sense? Jim, does this work for you? Jim, are we on the same page? And so what am I doing? I'm trying to understand, is the information that I'm presenting to Jim at that time, is it valuable? Does it make sense? Does he find it valuable? And the reason I do tie downs is because what I'm trying to do is establish small agreements along the way before I ask for the bigger agreement. And, well, Jim, as you were talking to me, you definitely told me that the four bedroom was something that was a requirement for you, and that still makes sense, right? So am I being redundant? A little bit, but also what I'm doing is I'm galvanizing little pieces of real estate in this guy's head. So I'm mapping out what he's going to say, what's important to him. And I'm having him understand that it's important by him repeating it to me and making agreements, little agreements here and there. So most salespeople are probably good with closed-ended questions, and once in a while you get a sales professional who ended up, in some sort of seminar and they know what an open-ended question is. Very few sales professionals use tie downs correctly, and I would probably tell you that very, very few sales professionals use my favorite category of question, or my favorite type of question, which is a light command. So in a light command, I'm no longer truly asking somebody, I'm actually commanding them to do something. And so um, it might work something like this. Jim, share with me a little bit about your current home. Jim, tell me a little bit about your job. Or Jim, could you explain for me, what it means for you to buy a new home as opposed to a resale home, right? So Jim can't just say yes, no, yellow. He actually has to stop and think. If I ask someone or I'm telling them to share with me, tell me, share with me, help me understand a little bit about where you are in the process. What I'm doing is I'm kind of forcing them to open up. Now, because I've built a lot of rapport with somebody and because we're building trust, because I've asked a variety of other questions and a variety of other ways to and fro, I'm really engaging in a regular, real dialogue. Now, my dialogue has an agenda. I'm trying to get a greater understanding of where this person is in the critical path. Light commands are some of my favorite questions, but that doesn't mean yes, no questions are bad. Closed-ended questions are really, really good to hammer down very specific pieces of information. Jim, we just saw two homes, Plan A and Plan B. Is Plan A, is that the one you prefer? No. Great. So then it's Plan B. Yeah, I think I like Plan B better. So yes, no questions definitely have a place, and I don't want you to think that they don't, but I'm really trying to get your prospect to open up and share. I'm trying to get them to talk as much as I possibly can. Okay, why so many questions? So why so many dang questions? Experience, urgency, ability, status, requirements, motivation. We've got open-ended question, closed-ended question. We have light commands, and we've got tie downs. And it just seems like a lot of focus I've been spending on questions, questions, questions. Here is the pay dirt. Here's why. Because before you start presenting anything to your customer, you want to make sure that what you're demonstrating for them has value, and value lives in the mind of the customer. So in the critical path, we have approach, qualify, demonstrate, cite, and close. We are now in demonstration mode. I don't want to present information to my customer that's not going to be relevant to my customer's needs and wants. Otherwise, it's going to be obvious that I was not listening when they were telling me that they had to have a 4-bedroom house. And they told me the reasons why. And they told me they needed this bedroom on the first floor, and they told me the reasons why. And on and on and on and on. And so if Jim told me that he needed the big backyard because he's got two big dogs and that he currently lives in an apartment, I'm not going to show him a home site that is inadequate or too small. I'm going to try to show him a property that's going to best suit and match his needs and wants as described. Now, here's the challenge. I might have to present something that I have because I might not have half-acre home sites. I might have really small home sites, and they might not be much bigger than what he had experienced up to this point. But I still have to sell them because I'm in new home sales and I can't put this person in a car and take them someplace else. I need to sell the product I have to offer. So I need to understand how important is the backyard. If I could get you the bedroom on the first floor for your mother-in-law, and that's super important, but maybe the area for the dogs in the backyard's not going to be quite as big. I need to measure and understand what the value of those things are. And I'm asking those questions because when I go to present, I want to present material that's relevant to the discussion that I had in the qualifying stage. I want my customer to be assured that I'm working in their best interest. I'm finding homes that are going to suit their needs. And when I give them information, it's going to lock right into the qualifying questions that I had asked before. Jim, I remember you said distinctly you needed 4 bedrooms, you needed the big backyard, and you wanted one of the bedrooms to be on the first floor with a walk-in shower. And because, thank you for spending so much time with me in that part of the process. And so I've got 3 homes that I think would probably meet your basic criteria. Now, in addition to that, one of them has a 2-car garage, one has a 3-car garage, which is a little bit more expensive. What I'd like to do is kind of show all of them to you, and then maybe what we can do is narrow it down to your one of a kind. And that is what we're trying to do. Eventually, what's going to happen is we're going to bring Jim to different home sites, and we're trying to narrow it down to your one of a kind. So initially, we maybe started in a model home, and it's got a great deal of fit and finish, and it's really interesting, and there's some upgrades in it, and it's sitting on a big lot. But eventually, I have to take this person to a place that might not be as interesting or as expensive or as exotic as a fully staged model home. I might be standing on dirt. I might be standing in framing with this person. I might be standing in a house that's not even close to being finished. But I have to transfer the excitement of the model home. I have to transfer the excitement of painting the picture that I'm going to be able to satisfy your needs and wants based on what you told me. You wanted the big backyard, and you wanted the first floor bedroom, and you wanted to have 4 bedrooms, one being a home office, one being a guest suite, one being a mother-in-law quarters. And Jim, I'll be darned, we have all of that here for you. I'd love to show it to you. So with an appropriate level of enthusiasm, you're going to take Jim to that home site. It's not going to look like the model necessarily. And we have to transfer some of the energy that he developed in seeing the fit and finish in the model, coupled with the fact that this is going to meet his basic requirements and his needs and his time frame, right? All of this, when you do the presentation, when you're doing demonstration on a site, all of this comes into play. Why? Because we're getting close. We're getting really, really close to the end of this discussion, which is closing time. So if we narrowed it down to your one of a kind, we looked at 3 different homes, we kind of determined that, these 2 are really, really good, but this really is the best one. And you're going to see a little shift in time. You're going to be standing on that home site or in the home with the customer, and he's going to start placing himself in that home. 90% of the time when the decision is made to purchase the home, the customer's actually standing in the house. So we think that happens, when we're doing a contract. It's not true. It happens, they actually take ownership of it. Not with a contract, but they take ownership of it in their heart or in their mind when they're standing in the house. And that decision happens 90% of the time in the house. Periodically, people go home and think about it, and maybe they make a finalized choice at home, or maybe they come back the next day just to walk through the home one last time for confirmation. But I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, it happens on the home site. If you get to a point in a presentation where you have someone physically standing on a home site, the probability that you're going to get a favorable yes response to a closing question is 10 times more likely than if you're standing in a stagnant sales office or in any other venue. All right, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's closing time. And so because you've done all the work necessary in the qualifying of this customer, closing should be really, really easy. In the past, there's many books that are written about, what kind of closing technique do you do? Do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do the Ben Franklin close? Do you do the summary close? All these different closes. And I would tell you that closing is not a technique. Closing is a simple question. Would you like to buy this home today? Is this the home you'd like to buy today? Make sure it's very clear and very concise, and don't labor through it, and don't over dramatize the importance of it. I would say that because you've brought this person through the critical path, and that you understand their time frame, you understand their financial situation, you understand all the other qualifying categories that we've gone through, that at this point you have an obligation to ask them if this is the house they want to buy. You have a total obligation, because they probably want to buy the house. If they were not interested in spending time with you, they wouldn't have gone through this process with you. And many sales professionals will veer off of the close. And what they'll say at this point is they're standing on the home site, the customer's excited, we've narrowed it down to their one of a kind. And the customer, and you'll say, great, all right, well, If you have any other questions, let me know, right? And that's just an opportunity to allow that customer to get in the car and drive away and not make a decision. Baloney. You have to ask for it. And so you're doing it, you have a moral obligation actually to ask for it. Because sometimes buying a home can be a little bit scary, and sometimes customers, they know, because you've gone through this process, they know the walls are kind of coming in at this point. You spent a lot of time with this person, and you've listened to them, you know their story, you've probably exchanged some of your personal information, just, making small talk, and they're starting to bond with you. And if you've determined that this is the right property for this person, for gosh sakes, don't let them get in their car and drive away without trying to help them. They might stumble into another sales office someplace else, and so they might buy another home someplace else that they ultimately is not as good for them. So ask them simple question. Jim, is this the home you'd like to buy today? Only closing question you'll ever need. Some people have ambiguity when they ask the question. They'll say something, a salesperson will say, Jim, would you like to take this one off the market? Well, what does that really mean, taking it off the market? We're professionals, and so we kind of understand this professional vernacular, but it's not really that accurate. Are you really taking a house off the market today? Like, what does that even really mean? Jim, would you like to go ahead and leave a check? Would you like to leave a check for this on the check on this house? Well, sure, I'll leave a check. Here a check, there a check, everywhere a check. Yeah, I got checks all over town, right? No, no, no. Keep the close really simple and don't make it awkward. Jim, is this the home you'd like to buy today? He's either going to be yes or no. And so what I'd say is expect that you're going to get a yes. And the reason you can expect a yes is because you've already earned the right to ask. You understand experience, urgency, ability, status, requirements, and motivation. You realize there's no blockers. There is no blockers to this person going forward with this, with a decision to say yes. So I expect a yes, but I prepare for a no. So there's a simple truth, and that is people typically will purchase a house after the fourth time someone has asked them to buy. And unfortunately, the average salesperson gives up after the first time. Like, you ask him, Jim, is this the home you'd like to buy today? And Jim says, no, I, I, I don't know. I just think I have to think about it. Great. So as a sales professional, I need to be prepared for that, right? I need to be prepared. And so I'm not going to get into an argument with him about buying the house. I'm going to ask him simple questions like, Jim, over the last hour, 2 hours, we've certainly talked a lot about what your needs and wants were. I think that you've given me a pretty clear idea, but also help me understand, is there anything that I left out? Is there anything that you felt like I didn't cover enough or give enough information for you? So what am I doing? I'm taking all the responsibility back onto my own shoulders. It's not that Jim has made a bad decision to say no. I, as a sales professional, need to take the pressure off of Jim and say, Jim, my gosh, it must be me, right? I'm the salesperson, and is there anything I didn't cover correctly or in the level of detail? Do you have any other questions that I haven't like fully explained to you? No, 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 you've done a great job. I really appreciate it. Okay, great. So Jim, help me understand. I guess, we went through the financing and that seemed to work. We went through your time frame and that seemed to work. We kind of narrowed it down to your one of a kind, and this property seems to be the one. So it helped me understand, what is it that you think I missed? What did I miss? So at that point, Jim will say, I just need to think about it, or I'm just not ready. So if these, we're starting to drift into a little bit of ambiguity, and so these might be irrational fears. It might be that this whole process, he might be a floor pop, which means a commitment on a first visit. So these are increasingly rare, but they do happen. Somebody might come in and I might take them through the critical path, and maybe from beginning to end, I'm only with this person 30 minutes. And so I'm effectively a total stranger, and I'm very close to selling him a house. That could make someone nervous. They all of a sudden they wake up and they're like, "Holy crap, I'm in the middle of this, I'm in the middle of the ocean here. What happened?" And so it might just be that he has to get comfortable. He might have to reestablish a comfort level with what's going on in the process. That's okay. You don't want to be heavy-handed and force people to do things that they're not prepared to do. Your job as a sales professional is to put your company in the best light possible, put the home site in the best light possible, and make sure this person's making an informed decision. Now, they might literally just have to sleep on it. This does happen. It's not unusual for someone to visit a property 5 times before they actually make a buying decision. So you might not be with them all those times. You might meet them on a Saturday, and then they might, you might get through part of the critical path with them. They might come back at 8 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, but you're not there, so you don't really realize that they were there. But they drove past the project. They drove past the house that we stood in. They went over to the grocery store because they're not familiar with this part of town. So that's their second visit. Maybe their third visit is next Sunday, and now they're a be back, right? So please understand that there might be 5 visits that are happening, and 2 or 3 of them you might not even be remotely aware of. This is totally normal behavior, totally normal behavior. You just have to reestablish a comfort level. So when you ask a closing question, I'm expecting a yes, but I'm also prepared for a no. What is preparation for a no? I need to probe a little deeper to see if I've covered all their concerns. Then, if for any number of reasons they need more time, I need to tell them that I'm going to follow up with them, and then I need to do it. Super, super important. I have their contact information because I procured that much earlier in the conversation. And I'll say, Jim, I totally understand buying a home can be a big step. And I do think you're making the right choice if you were to go forward, but I understand you need more time. Would it be okay if I touched base with you next week? Yes, of course it would be. So instead of saying that, say, gosh, would it be okay if I called you next Thursday around 3 o'clock? Are you available? No, I'm at work. I usually can't talk when I'm at work. Okay, well, when is a good time? Usually after 5. Great. I've just been invited to make a phone call and to talk to this person after 5 on Thursday. What am I going to do during that phone call? My goal is to set another appointment for the weekend or sooner to get him back in. I'm expecting a yes, but I am fully prepared for a no. If you're fully prepared for a no and expecting a yes, then nothing's going to happen by surprise. This person might need a little more time, and you're going to give it to them, but you're going to circle around. You're going to get them on contract. I hope that you found this segment valuable and helpful. What I'm going to do now is slowly scan through each of the slides of my PowerPoint deck so that you can have an opportunity to see all of the tables that are included and the narrative that I've written. You can always stop it, you can rewind it, and go back, reread it. The biggest benefit to the tables with the categories of questions and the types of questions and even the tactics or the point of entry into a conversation are just guidelines. It's absolutely essential that you take some time and craft out your own questions in advance. Never be surprised about what somebody's going to ask or say. There's a finite number of things that are going to happen in a sales office and a finite number of things that you're going to talk about in a conversation within the construct of a sales conversation. So the key is preparation. It's not about luck. Luck favors the prepared mind. So just make sure you take some time and you make some preparation. I'm available to help you anytime that you want. You can always reach out to me. I am more than happy to schedule time for you for one-on-one coaching to help you craft out your questions, to get you comfortable with what you plan on saying, and to really plan out planned encounters. I will help you plan the next encounter you're going to have with a prospect and hopefully get them over the finish line by guiding them through the critical path methodology. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget, visit our website and schedule your free 30-minute evaluation.